Olivia Rodrigo is 18 years old and already at the top of the pop star game. But does she deserve it? Her songs are popular, sure, but popularity doesn't necessarily equal quality. Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang. And it's easy to think that she's just another Disney actress buying a pop career. But that idea does not do her justice. Because the deeper we look into her album and into her voice, the more we realize how incredibly special she really is. Olivia Rodrigo absolutely deserves all of her success. And today we're gonna find out exactly why, by looking into her structure, her instrumentals, and even some of the incredible techniques she uses to add emotional nuance into her vocal performances. I'm Pretentious Epic, welcome to my Strawberry Castle, and let's go. As a breakup album by a young Disney star, perhaps the success wasn't too surprising, but the extent of that success absolutely was. According to my favorite website, she was the first artist in history to debut their first 3 singles in the top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100. But enough of Wikipedia. What is Sour actually about? Contrary to what you might think, Sour isn't really about a breakup. It kind of is, but more specifically, it's about how this breakup affected an emotionally complex and developing 17-year-old girl, with each song acting as a snapshot of her emotions around it. And when you put the snapshots together, you get a story so well structured, it's basically a movie. And right in the middle is the centerpiece of the whole album, which not only presents the primary thesis of the album, but also has some of the coolest instrumental structure I've ever seen. But before we can talk about that, we have to talk about song structure. Song structure is an incredibly complex topic, but the most commonly used structure, lyrically, goes like this: verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. What's so great about this structure is that it creates a great balance between repetition and variance. In music, repetition creates catchiness, but can get boring. Try singing The Song That Never Ends for more than 4 verses, and you'll quickly see why. This simple structure is often used by modern pop music, and Olivia Rodrigo is no different, with almost every song following this structure, but she's not afraid to experiment. Both Brutal and Happier have a bridge with no lyrics, Brutal has no third chorus, and Enough For You's final chorus is modified to show emotional progression. But once you have your lyrical structure, you have to add in the music behind it. And how this music is structured can be absolutely make or break, even for the most well-written of lyrics. So now, it's time to take a deeper look into the fascinating instrumental structure behind Sour's centerpiece. Good For You starts off with this iconic bass line. I'm gonna call this the verse motif because it's not present in any of the choruses or the bridge, only the verses. This is our traditional lyrical structure, with an outro added on at the end. But we're not only talking about lyrics anymore, because we've also got 2 non-lyrical sections to add in, an intro and a pre-bridge. What's interesting is that these sections actually function more as extensions rather than as their own unique identities. The intro is actually this verse motif played for 2 measures, and the pre-bridge mimics the first half of the chorus with the lyrics excluded. And this is why we have to go deeper. Most people would look at the structure and call it a day. But when we split each part into 2 sections, that's when things get really interesting. So the song starts with this intro, which establishes this naked bass line as the motif. Then we're transitioned into the first section of the verse by these smooth background vocals.
Good for you, I guess you moved on really easily.
Notice that our bass line is not alone anymore. Now we've got these soft drums in the background. Transition again, and now we're in the second half. But now more instruments get added in, which adds this momentum, pulling us towards the amazing chorus. And finally, this fiery drum roll works as the final thrust forward. When we step back and look at the energy from the intro up to this first chorus, we can see the trajectory Good For You takes us on. Generally speaking, we start slow and steadily increase in energy until we hit that awesome chorus. Getting more detailed, we can see slight spikes in energy at transition points. Because let's be honest, our attention spans, not great. So good instrumentals know how to balance low and high energy. And this is why Good For You's final chorus feels so huge. As traditional song structure typically goes, Good For You has 3 choruses. Unlike the first 2 verses, which differ slightly instrumentally, the first 2 choruses are exactly identical. But our third and final chorus is where things get interesting. The first section of our final chorus is the quietest of the entire song. Even to the point where absolutely everything cuts to silence, which all sets up for this. The loudest, highest energy point of the entire song. Or at least, it feels like the loudest point. Because if you actually compare the choruses, the last section of the final chorus is actually identical to that of the first 2. But it doesn't sound like it, because moments of quiet will always make following moments feel louder. This is the exact principle behind the infamous dubstep drop. A slow lead up to build tension, a softer pause, and then the drop. And this drop feels so much bigger because of how it's been set up. Making the first half of this final chorus so quiet is the primary reason that it feels like such a perfect climactic moment, but it's not the only reason. Because if you've been paying attention, you'll notice something interesting. In the first 2 choruses, this line goes like this. But in the last one, surface level, obviously this newness makes it feel fresh and keeps the audience on their toes. But we can also look at how this line change actually changes the emotional backdrop of the whole chorus. The chorus lyrics are pretty simple. He's happy and healthy, she spent the night crying on the floor of her bathroom. But he's so unaffected and she can't understand it. God, she wishes she could be like that. Through this line, we see that the chorus centers around her, how she is so upset by the whole situation, and she wishes she could be happy and unaffected like him. In the final chorus, this line changes. He's so unaffected, like a damn sociopath. She's no longer centering on herself, and instead she's centering on him, and making the accusation that being so unaffected is a symptom of sociopathy. Now we can see an emotional progression. A girl who begins sad and upset about her breakup progresses to being angry at her ex for not being the same way. And we get this all because of one single line change. Now, to be fair, the whole story of the song is pretty simple. But if you didn't catch her primary point, she sums it up for you in the bridge. Maybe I'm too emotional, but your apathy's like a wound in salt. Maybe I'm too emotional, or maybe you never cared at all. If you're still not sure if this is important, she makes sure to say it twice. Our first 2 choruses center on this first idea. But by the final chorus, she's starting to think otherwise. Okay, that's all cool. And maybe these are things that you've even thought about. But there are a lot of things that go into music production that I bet you never think about. And I am so excited to get into it. Pay attention to Olivia's voice. Can you hear that effect on it? Okay, maybe let's try somewhere a little more obvious. And it'll be even easier if we isolate the vocals. Okay, now that actually sounds bad? But clearly it's intentional, and within the song Brutal, it's there because
I want it to be like messy.
Brutal is about the tumultuous emotions of a complex 17-year-old girl. So Olivia wants it to be messy, to have this texture, this grit, to portray that. In order to make this sound, an effect is used on top of her vocals, most present within the chorus, but you can hear it all over the entire song.
And I'm so tired that I might quit my job, start a new life.
My uneducated self is simply going to call it distortion. Compare these vocals from Brutal
All I did was try my
to these from Trader.
Ain't it funny how you ran to her?
Here, the vocals are very natural. It's very likely there's still audio editing going on, but certainly not this distortion sound. But when we get back to Good For You, we find it to be somewhere in between. It's subtle, but just enough to add that edgier, rebellious vibe. And remember that different parts of the song will have differing amounts of distortion. Compare the chorus with the bridge.
Baby, I'm too emotional.
Which might have even no distortion at all. So it's important to understand, distortion or any kind of audio editing, it's not good or bad, it simply creates a different sound. And whether or not that sound is good for the song is up to the artist. Take another example from Good For You. This quiet section at the beginning of the final chorus uses equalization to make her voice sound farther away. And when we get loud again, she's back to sounding close up.
Like a damn sociopath.
And yes, I'm well aware there are skeptics among you that want to tell me, excuse me, Olivia doesn't produce the music, why are you giving her all the credit? It's the producers that make her songs good, not Olivia. You know what? You're half right. Dan Negro and Alexander23 and everyone else who is part of the team behind her absolutely deserve a large portion of the credit. From the music to the video production, it seems like every aspect of her team has been incredible. But if you think these songs would be the same without Olivia Rodrigo, well, let's test that theory. What does Good For You sound like without Olivia Rodrigo? It's good, but not amazing. But that's the point. It doesn't have to be amazing without Olivia, because the producer knows she's going to be there. Because the singer's voice is an instrument. Therefore, the instrumentation has to be balanced around the singer's voice. And yeah, this is true for every singer, every voice. But Olivia's voice is uniquely special, and there isn't a single singer on the planet that could make this album better. So let's talk about why. When we think of great singers, typically we think of, can they hit the notes? Do they have crazy range? Can they belt it? And I'm not gonna claim that Olivia's on top of the planet in any of those categories. Because what makes Olivia so special are all of the techniques that she does so naturally that you never notice, but they make the music so much better. Because how you sing goes so much farther than just hitting the notes. Let's start with something simple. Breathy singing is when a singer's voice sounds breathy. And for new singers, it's very frowned upon. It's often a sign of bad technique, and if done poorly, it can damage someone's voice. But for pop stars where technique isn't an issue, this breathy sound is often preferred. Billie Eilish is a singer who does this a lot, and it helps her songs feel so intimate.
I should have known.
But when she needs to belt it, she switches back. This is because breathy singing is harder to create volume with, whereas a more traditionally clean voice is better for belting out one's emotions and feels stronger. While Billie Eilish seems to prefer this breathy sound, Ariana Grande tends to stay away from it, instead giving us her own awesomely powerful vocals. Neither style is better, and both stars use both because these styles simply create different feelings. Breathy feels a bit intimate, while clean has a bit more power. But what about Olivia Rodrigo? What style does she prefer? Play any of her songs and you'll quickly realize she goes for a breathy style. But if you stop there, you'll miss out on one of the aspects of her style that gives her so much depth of emotion. Because like Billie and Ariana, she uses both. And when she does belt it, she may not be Adele, but she's pretty damn close.
'Cause I know that you'll never feel sorry.
God damn. By using both styles, Olivia's able to add this emotional depth.
Brown guilty eyes.
She can start quiet and sad and then build up to a full strength of emotion.
And I know that you'll never feel sorry.
Do you remember how quiet moments make following moments feel louder? Well, the same is true for the reverse. In the driver's license chorus, most of it is belted.
Guess you didn't mean what you wrote in that song about me.
But the last line is quiet and breathy.
'Cause you said forever, now I drive alone past your street.
And by putting it right after, it maximizes the sadness that's present in this last line. But interestingly, in the final chorus, the lines that were belted are changed to being soft and breathy.
'Cause you didn't mean what you wrote in that song about me.
Because while she started kind of angry, by the end, she's just sad.
'Cause you said forever, now I drive alone past your street.
And while it may not be surprising that she uses both styles within the same song, or that she uses both styles in lines back to back, what's fascinating is that she'll use both styles even within the same line.
So okay, now that I'm gone.
And when you start to notice how often she switches between these two styles throughout the entire album, it starts to make sense why her songs feel so emotionally powerful and vulnerable at the same time. Olivia ebbs and flows between these styles as her emotions ebb and flow through her. In this way, her singing doesn't feel like it's pre-written, it feels like her emotion is simply pouring out of her as she sings.
Before you found someone more exciting, the next second you were gone. And you left me there crying, wondering what I did wrong.
And I know I keep saying this abstract term, emotional depth, so let me explain what I mean. In movies, what a character says can mean something completely different, depending on how they say it. Yelling, "I hate you," is very different than whispering,
I hate you.
Therefore, a singer can control the nuances of their emotions not only through what their lyrics are, but also through how they sing them. And by using both breathy singing and clean, Olivia Rodrigo is able to convey not just the nuances of one or the other, instead she's able to convey this emotional range of both combined, swinging between them in the way that our emotions often swing as well. And it's this vocal control that makes Olivia's voice so phenomenal. And the exact number of techniques that she uses is too many to count. But let's go through a few. To start, let's talk about a texture to her voice that Olivia brings to Jealousy, Jealousy.
And I can't let it go.
Can you hear that? Do you hear that little grit in her voice?
And I can't let it go.
That's rasp. At first I thought it was only here, but I still thought it was fascinating. But once you start to pay attention, you'll realize that this rasp is all over the entire song.
I kinda wanna throw my phone across the room.
As far as why rasp is used here is hard to say, but to hazard a guess, I'd say it helps Olivia sound almost world-weary, someone who's exhausted with the frustrating realities of what they feel they'll never have. And speaking of Jealousy, Jealousy, listen to this.
I see everyone getting all the things I want. I'm happy.
She's rapping. Well, kinda. Let me explain. Let's define singing as the synchronization of one's voice to a series of notes, whereas rapping is the synchronization of one's voice to a specific beat. And while the two aren't necessarily exclusive, they often are. When she's singing normally, it's easy to visualize the rising and falling of her pitch as she matches the notes.
I know that beauty's not my like,
But in other sections, this rising and falling is no longer present.
but it feels like that way.
As far as pitch goes, she's monotone. But if you think about the beat, you can see how she matches it.
But it feels like that way.
And it's not only Jealousy, Jealousy where she does this.
And you bought a new car and your career's really taking off.
But what makes Jealousy, Jealousy special is that she'll switch between the styles even within the same line so as to gain the advantages of both.
Beauty is not my like, but it feels like that way.
And if you thought Olivia wasn't cool enough, at points in her album, she'll even combine them, riding that beat as she sings, like here in Driver's License.
Guess you didn't mean 'cause you wrote in that song about me.
Okay. 2 more quick techniques. She laughs mid-word here in Good For You.
And good for you, it's like you never even met me. And good for you, it's like you never even met me.
And I don't know what this is called, but it's amazing.
Oh, and I just, oh, and I just, oh, and oh, and
Oh my god, it's so fucking amazing!
oh, and
Regardless of what you thought of Olivia before, hopefully now you have a deeper appreciation for how much control she really has over her voice. Because while it's easy to listen to a bop for a few minutes, it's a lot harder to truly appreciate all of the work and quality that goes into that final product. It's also hard to appreciate how albums are structured, especially when most of us don't listen to the whole thing. But if you don't, you are missing out on some incredible music. So let's talk about Olivia's most underrated song, Hope You're Okay. Hope You're Okay is really weird, placed within a breakup album. It's not about Olivia, it's not about her ex, it's not about her ex's new girlfriend, in fact, it's not about the relationship or breakup whatsoever. Okay, well, what is it about? Hope You're Okay is actually really simple. It's about 2 people Olivia used to know, in verse 1 a boy and in verse 2 a girl. And Hope You're Okay is about Olivia remembering them and their own struggles and how she hopes they're doing okay. And that may not sound like the most powerful song in the world, but there's something about it that just gets me, and I legit tear up. Partly this is due to the fact that Olivia sings the whole thing with such a softness that it feels like she's barely holding back tears.
parents cared more about the Bible than being good to their own child.
But also, pay attention to how the chorus progresses. First, it has this line.
But if you're out there,
In the second, this line becomes,
I miss you,
but in the final chorus,
'cause I love you. And I hope that you're okay.
see, people are weird. We don't use the word love unless it's about our lover or sometimes between family members. But because we use it so often when it comes to relationships and so little when it comes to everything else, it ends up meaning that much more when Olivia uses it here. And for someone who's been through this really rough breakup, for her to express so much empathy for others is kind of incredible. And this is why this song is so perfect as the end piece to the album. Olivia has spent 10 songs focusing on herself. And as justified as her frustrations may be, when you only dwell on your own problems, it's easy to feel really alone. But this extension of empathy shows that she's finally accepted her situation and she's ready to move on. It's easy to view Olivia's success and think it's undeserved. But on a closer look, she uses so many awesome vocal techniques that are easy to miss if you're not looking for them. And the team behind her has been incredible all the way through. And the best part is, she's really young. Don't be surprised if she gets even better. Because as good as she is now, as amazing as Sour is, what I'm really excited about is the future.
I came into the studio one day and I was like, Dan, I hate Deja Vu. I don't like it. The second verse is boring. So we changed the melody and we put some gang vocals. I love yelling over the top of songs. I feel like it really raised the energy of the song.